So I was contemplating this curious idea known as ethical philosophy. Um, I took a course in ethical philosophy when I was in college, and the first day of class, the professor said to us that studying ethical philosophy will not make you an ethical person, nor does being an ethical person entail studying ethical philosophy. And it's, here we're studying these different theories about what is right, what people ought to do. Um, I just felt like it's kind of curious, isn't it? And as we studied utilitarianism, Kant's deontological ethics, um, Aristotelian virtue ethics, and you know, um, and Lockean natural rights. It, the curious thing is, we would always find these things in these theories that sort of seem to contradict the way that we certain intuitive moral truths. And it's interesting. I mean, you could check each philosophy for logical internal inconsistency, but the greater inconsistencies were always inconsistencies with things that we would automatically consider to be wrong. Like, for example, we would say that we could refute utilitarianism by pointing out that if you just bullied one person and the whole rest of the room got a big laugh out of that, well then the utility of the whole room went up, even even at the expense of that one person. Um, and so utilitarianism applied in that matter, does not value individual rights, or does not value the individual enough. And the same thing with Kant's deontological ethics. That's the sort of a weakness in that is that if a killer is at your door looking for someone who's hiding in your attic, you're obligated by the categorical imperative to tell the killer where they are when he asks, because otherwise you're lying, and you can't have a society of liars. Um, you know, and you could make that argument. In fact, strangely, Kant did make that argument. He said you should tell the killer where the person is, because if you universalized lying, then the society couldn't run, and then and that's I consider it laughable, if not abominable. But it's interesting we check that against our moral intuitions that we have. In a sense, we don't need to be told how to arrive at right and wrong. We we are moralizing creatures. We naturally think in terms of right and wrong. I mean, to a certain extent, it's instilled in us by society. But I mean, society itself is a natural thing that we do. Um, and so I think that the more interesting area of ethical philosophy is not so much prescriptive ethics, but descriptive ethics. I think of like Lawrence Kohlberg, Carol Gilligan, um, Don Beck, and Ken Wilber. They're the idea of that people go through these stages in their moral development. Broadly speaking, three different stages. There's pre-conventional, which is where you're just this impulsive narcissist who what's right is what I say is right, and fuck everyone else, and I'm just gonna do whatever is good for me, or and then there's conventional, where society's values are kind of instilled in us, and then there's so we adapt to society's morals, and I think Lakoff and Johnson do a good job of talking about the the strict the strict father metaphor versus the nurturant parent metaphor. One being based on discipline and you know and facing the consequences of your actions and so that, whereas the nurture parent metaphor is about um, being, I mean, certainly having boundaries, but also kind of being encouraged and nurtured and having cultivating virtue and stuff. So, um, but I mean, that's where both of those metaphors come to play is in the conventional stage, which then lays the groundwork for the post-conventional stage, where you're able to take sort of your moral upbringing, but then sort of imagine other possibilities and uh, reason about your about ethics, and I think and that's kind of where ethical philosophy. I mean, you have to be kind of post-conventional in order to do ethical philosophy in general. I mean, to be able to reason about ethics, you have to first have the um, have the ethics instilled in you. Um, and so I think that's the problem I think with a lot of ethical philosophy is that it tries to reason about something that is first built from a pre-rational stage. I mean, yeah, and so I think ethics kind of relies a lot on intuition. Um, and so is there any sort of universal moral truth behind it? I mean, certainly the golden rule comes close, but there's a lot of people have nitpicked about the golden rule. Like one person said you ought to do unto others as they would have done unto them, which kind of gets over the whole paradox of a sadist who wants to be whipped and beaten and stuff because or I should say masochist, excuse me, masochist who wants to be whipped and beaten and stuff. So and so he'll do that unto others because he would like that done to him as well. Um, Obviously, people have different preferences, and what they want done into them may differ. Um, but I mean, the whole golden rule, what's essentially pointing to, I think, is in what ethics are all about. Yeah, and I'm not going to, and I don't think it can necessarily be put in these strict analytic terms that the philosophers like to use. It's just that we're all human, we're all in this together, and we're all interconnected. You know, uh, it's ultimately about the fact that we all experience pain and pleasure and enjoy and value in life, and that and that's it's and that the world doesn't revolve around us. I mean, ethics is ultimately about realizing that it's not all about you, that other people matter in this world, and you have to you have to give a damn about them too. Yeah, and that's really what it all seems to be about is that we're all one, we're all interconnected, and and you have to treat others as yeah. Uh, I guess as they don't want to be treated, as you want to be treated, whatever. Treat others like they matter is what it comes down to. Is just being compassionate and empathetic, and yeah, and caring towards others. That's I guess I'm using nurturant parent metaphors, but I mean, uh, yeah, you could do more strict father metaphor. We're talking about dignity and deference and humility. There's a number of virtues, but yeah, it basically comes down to uh, realizing that you're not, that it's not just about you, that there are others who matter. So that's my thoughts for now.